Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Bookum Show. My name is Kyle Colley and this is a special episode of Author Talks Podcast, a podcast to hear the behind the scenes stories, ideas, and writing journeys of authors. This episode is brought to you by Bookum, the Bookie's new and best way to host dynamic online book clubs. Download the app and start your book club today at www.bookumapp.com. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. My guest today is the generational Cheryl McKissack Daniel. Cheryl is the president and CEO of McKissack & McKissack, a design and construction company founded by Moses McKissack in 1905. It is the oldest Black-owned architecture and construction company in the United States. The family has built incredible projects such as the Brooklyn Nets Barclay Center, Carnegie Library at Fisk University, the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, the new Terminal 1 at JFK International Airport in New York, Lincoln Financial Field, home of the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Tuskegee Army Airfield, to name a few. She is the author of the book we will discuss today, The Black Family Who Has Built America. She is a builder, a civil engineer, an executive, a leader, a Howard University grad, a writer, and walking history of her family's 230 plus year legacy. Cheryl, welcome to the Author Talks Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit? I know I want to get into the family history, but what are some projects you all are working on right now or anything that your team's excited about?
So we just did a ribbon cutting for JP Morgan Chase's corporate headquarters at 270 Park. McKissack was built out the trading floors for JP Morgan Chase. At the ribbon cutting, Jamie Dimon mentioned they trade $2 trillion a day. On those trading floors. I know I would have said 500 billion or something, but no, 2 trillion. We are also project managers at JFK Terminal 1, which would be a new state-of-the-art airport terminal, almost 3 million square feet here in New York. We are also working on waterfront projects for the Economic Development Corporation. We just finished up a billion-dollar hospital, Coney Island Hospital, for Economic Development Corporation. We do a lot of work for the MTA, overseeing their capital program. And earlier this year, we started the Mentor Program, which is a very large contract for McKissack's, where we bring in smaller contractors and mentor them to work on MTA projects. And so that project alone is taking a lot of time to get off the ground, but we're doing it.
I love to hear it. And I said, thank you for all that y'all are doing in New York. As someone that travels out there, it's good to, those airports, that airport specifically needs all the help it can get. So I just want to say thank you there. Can you break down a little bit about your family history? It's incredible. I just want to hear a little bit about each generation and how it kind of carried on the mission.
Okay, sure. So our family goes back about 230 years to 1790, when the first descendant of our family came to this country, and he was Moses McKissack the first, and he was taught the trade of making bricks. Moses McKissack was in North Carolina. Moses McKissack the second was a master builder and carpenter, and eventually moved to Tennessee. And that happened, of course, through him marrying a slave. Well, he was given as a gift to his sons, the slave master's son's wedding, and they moved to Tennessee. So they were in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Moses McKissack III was the nation's first Black licensed architect with license 117, and his brother Calvin had license 118 in the state of Tennessee. And they were architects, and they incorporated us in 1905. And then my father took over, William D. Berry McKissack, who also was an architect and a general contractor. And when he became ill, my mother, Leatrice McKissack, took over the business. And then I retired my mother in 1999, 1999, into 1999. She eventually left the office in 2000. And then I took over the family legacy.
I love to hear it. And you in the book you talk a lot about like Booker T and the idea of kind of working not just with your working with your head, but also with your hands. And your family has been, up as you would say, up from slavery and all the things that your family's built because of this. I'm curious, like when we were talking to Will Packer, he talked about his family motto of being, if you want to have what others don't, you have to do what others won't. I'm curious, just like what maybe sayings or heuristics or guiding principles that your family kind of passed down in the way you all think.
Well, in the book, I do talk about them, and I call them the 5 Ps because going back and looking at the McKissacks and understanding their experiences and all they've been through, um, I coined the 5 Ps as persistence, perseverance, preparedness, purpose. And then I added the fifth, which was prayer. Because when you think about a family business that's fifth generation, that's almost unheard of. For a family business to pass to the second generation, it's about 40% of all businesses. And then it's 18% for those businesses to pass to a third generation. And then it's 3% for them to pass to a fourth generation. And we're talking white businesses, right? We're not talking Black businesses. So for us to be here after 5 generations is quite incredible. And that's why I added the fifth P, which is prayer. Um, I believe there has to be some kind of divine intervention for the McKissacks to be able to navigate all that they have over the last 230 years as Black people in America.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how did you all handle secession? Because I think of just in general how hard it is to get the next kid in the family or the next generation to want to go into the business. But you all have done it over and over again. I think a lot of families can learn, like, how were you all able to, handle transition and leadership?
I think it was a different time for the McKissacks, and Moses McKissack the first was able to get Moses McKissack the second into the business because they were forced. They were still in slavery, and they basically were trying to survive. But then Moses McKissack II eventually opened his own business in Pulaski, Tennessee, in the late 1800s, right after emancipation. So then it was up to him to entice his children to become interested in the business. And his situation was quite interesting because he had 7 girls first, Moses McKissack II. He had 7 girls first, and then he had 7 boys. So when Moses McKissack the third came along and Calvin McKissack, um, they were, that was a way for them to excel as Black men in the prejudiced Deep South by following in the footsteps of what had already been set before them. And then when you get to my father's generation, I think it was just set in motion at that point because all of his brothers were either builders, developers, or architects. But then he's the only one who stayed with the family firm. The rest of them went out and started their own business.
Yep.
And so then when it came to me and my 2 sisters, again, our parents were raising us back then. We didn't have the internet. We couldn't go to George Washington and choose from 200 or 300 different types of degrees.
Right.
It just wasn't that many options. And so, my father told us, you can go any school you want to, but I'm only paying for Howard University. And architecture and engineering, that's what you have to do. I think it's much harder for my generation to get our kids involved because there's so many other options for them. And there's so many more influences. I mean, they see people on the internet becoming millionaires and just by being influencers. Well, we just didn't even have that when we were growing up. And so, it's the influence is just extremely different. So the challenge has been, what are we going to do with the sixth generation?
Right.
And so since that hasn't worked out on the ownership side, I have been working actively trying to figure out what does the management side look like at McKissack as we go through a succession plan. And so we are actually in our succession plan. We're naming a new president and CEO in January, a CFO, and a COO. And they've pretty much been actively running the company since February, but now they'll be announced in January. And the ironic part is our president and CEO is from Ghana, Africa, which is where the McKissacks are from.
Wow.
And he's been with us almost 20 years. And so things have gone full circle for us. And I am planning to be around at least through 2030 to make sure that the succession is running smoothly over the next 4 years.
No, I love that. And I want to get into some of the projects that you all are working on, but I do want to know, like, what was it like growing up in a family that had such a strong legacy? And when it comes to like the pressures or just the exposure that you got to see, because I know you talked about in the book just like going over to your uncle's house and those experiences. So can you talk a little bit about coming from a Black family that's had affluency and have been able to kind of grow up in America in that way as well?
I mean, we were normal people. I don't even think we realized what we were carrying at the time. I know I didn't. We were around some of the most notable Black people in history, from Honor Bontemps to Langston Hughes to Z. Alexander Luby, Avon Williams. And so, the list just goes on. The Reverend Jesse Jackson. I mean, these were regular people that we would see. Tina Turner even came to my house when I was growing up because my uncle was her manager early on, she and Ike. And so nobody was really famous yet.
See.
And so, the breadth and the depth of it didn't happen till later. I think I always knew I wanted to work for myself. I wasn't quite sure if it was going to be in the family business. And, that sort of evolved, and I'm glad that it did in that manner. But carrying the weight of 5 generations didn't really hit me until recently. Yeah, I'm like, oh my God. I knew I could depend on myself to improve upon the brand, to take the company to New York and build it there. That's what I really wanted to do because each generation improved upon the company. They made it bigger, stronger, more resources. So I knew I wanted to do that. But now I'm struggling with, I got to pass the baton to somebody, the sixth generation or something. Like, what am I going to do? So I'm struggling with that.
Oh yeah, we need the sixth, we need the seventh. The other thing I really thought was really cool because I just learned about Mahalia Jackson and Glory Fried Chicken in early this year. So then I was reading the
Oh,
book.
really?
Yeah, and then I was reading the book, and your family worked and built these restaurants, and I just think it was really cool to
Yes.
see Black entrepreneurship kind of working with each other throughout times, and you didn't really realize that. And speaking of that, can you even talk a little bit just about HBCUs and your family's history with building, as we mentioned, like on Fisk University and all the other spots?
So, Moses McKissack II incorporated us in the late 1800s after emancipation. A lot of his patrons at that time were white people because he had been providing services for them while he was a slave. And so they still needed the services. His master would recommend him to, his associates. And so there was definitely quite a bit of white patrons. But it wasn't until later when Birth of a Nation came out that changed things where white people decided they no longer wanted to patronize Black businesses because we were a menace to society. What have you. And so, I mean, thus came Tulsa and the destroying of our properties and our businesses and things like that. And so the McKissacks had to turn to Black patriots to get their business. And so the historically Black colleges were definitely one of them, one of their sectors. So we're talking about Tennessee State, where there are probably, 9 buildings that the McKissack did there. Meharry Medical College, Tuskegee, Alabama. Matter of fact, when I went back to work with my mom, we renovated a dormitory, Millbank's dormitory, that my grandfather had built 50 plus years earlier. And so the historically Black colleges were very good clients to the McKissacks, as well as churches, Black businesses like Universal Insurance. That was the Black insurance company that was out of Memphis, Tennessee. Um, the Morris Memorial Building that was developed by Booker T. Washington and other businessmen in Tennessee when it was downtown Nashville. And so, at that time, and we talk about that in the book, Booker T. Washington and a lot of the Black leaders say, we need to patronize each other. And that is exactly what Steve Harvey said when he was talking about my book. He was like, Black people have the power to make each other great. You guys can go out there and buy this woman's book and run it up the bestsellers chart easily. And we do have that power. But they were bringing that up 120 years ago, 130 years ago, and we still have not latched on to that power. Hopefully, we're going to get better. Hopefully, through what this current federal administration is doing as far as trying to get away with our history and the DE&I and the MWBE programs. Hopefully, we can. A silver lining in that is that we can come together and we can make each other great.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so true. I think we have, especially nowadays, we have Black businesses in so many different sectors and spaces, even like what we're talking about, just the fact that you all worked with Mahalia Jackson and her being
Mhm.
as a celebrity and as a singer is willing to go work with a Black business and kind of work with each other to continue to grow. I think it helps. And you have these kind of it allows you all to interface with each other and kind of build each other up. And as you said, work with one another.
I
Yeah,
can
go ahead.
add to that.
Of
That's
course.
like Charlamagne, who published my book. That has been a tremendous help. And, he has taken his entire structure and put that behind my book, as he did with Don Staley and several other books that he has put out. And so the Black solidarity is very important.
Yeah, and to that point, how did that come along? How do you kind of get connected with Charlamagne, and how did the book or the writing process go for you?
One day, my assistants heard Charlamagne shout me out, as people should know who Cheryl McKissack, and then a whole list, Kamala Harris, da 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 da. I'm not sure he said Kamala Harris or put me in the same category, but he went through a list and she heard it. And so Chan, my PR consultant, called up Charlamagne and said, "You need to have her on the show." And so that's how I got on the Breakfast Club the first time around. And I want to say that was 2020 or 2021, somewhere back in there. And then from there, that led to us bringing Don Peoples back onto the show to talk about Affirmation Tower and just economic empowerment, which is a track that we need to talk about. I mean, entertainment and sports is great. That has been a great field for us as Black people. But let's also talk about Black economic empowerment. And so I think that got a lot of attention from Charlamagne and his audience. And so Chan said, listen, we're doing a book. You help us with that? He's like, absolutely. And so it just was organic.
No, I love it. And but speaking of sports, you all have also built, and I think you even talked about the shirts where it's like, who built this, right? And we talk
Mhm.
about that. And then when we see what you all have done, even with Barclays and Center in Brooklyn and Lincoln Financial and Philly, can you talk about some of those sports projects? And because I know we have our followers love to always hear about the sports conversations too. So I'm curious about that idea of like building these stadiums and think about it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up uh, our motto, which is who built this? We did. Because really, that is not just about the McKissack family. That is about the collective of Black people who had a hand in building this country, who are often overlooked, who are the hidden figures behind what this nation stands for. We've created the actual structures, we've created the culture, we've created the food, we've created our hands are all over the blueprint of America. And so we want to pay gratitude to them, to all of us, and we also want to bring awareness to what we've done. And so that is why our title is so powerful, The Black Family Who Built America. Because obviously the McKissacks did not build every building in America, but how many Black people did? And so, it's a metaphor, and it's powerful, and it has deep meaning. Um, and to be at J.P. Morgan Chase's, to cut that ribbon, knowing that Wall Street used Black people as collateral during slavery. I mean, it's just full circle, and another indication of what we have done to build this country. And so, working on the stadiums like Barclay Arena and Philadelphia Eagles, those stadiums are important because, I mean, who is on the football field? Who, who is on the football field? Okay, and so who is on the basketball court? And so being a part of those projects was amazing. The Barclay Arena, is the first chapter in my book. Um, because I'll never forget just looking at TV and seeing that Bruce Ratner is going to buy the Nets and he's going to build an arena in Brooklyn. And I'm thinking to myself is, that's the Black community. I need to be a part of that. How do I make that happen? What do I have to do to navigate the process to make sure that we can become a part of that project? And that's exactly what we did. We put in place a strategy, and I don't want to spoil it. People have to read about it. But it was a strategy to get to that end and to be able to see Jay-Z on stage talking about Brooklyn and saying they can't wait for us to fuck up. Because I'm like, yep, that's the story of my life. They can't wait to see if I'm gonna fuck up. But it's more like FAFO, okay?
I love to hear it. Can we just as far as just like because again, you're a Black woman in this space. Can you talk about just kind of paving your way there? Because I think so often, like I just would love to hear how you've been able to navigate and build up, and because I think you're such a role model in that space too, and building. Can you talk a little about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is commonplace for a lot of people, Black people in professional business, really in any business, that you are quite often in a space, in a room where you're the only Black person, the only female, and, you're invisible. I mean, how often does that happen? You could just fly on an airplane and not see any other Black people. I do it all the time, and it's just so obvious. So, you navigating through that takes strength, and I think at heart we are very strong. Understanding that we do have something to offer, that diversity is good, it is profitable, that we do bring value, and making sure we talk about it. But you have to know that first.
Yep.
Internally, you need to know yourself that you're bringing value so that when you're talking to someone about what your pitch or offer is going to be, that it's authentic, that it's real. Because there are people out there who understand that, who do want to hear from you and will gravitate to it and, will buy it. And it only takes one or two out of 100 to make the difference. Okay. And so that's what I would tell myself all the time. Every event, every time I would be in that type of situation, I'd make myself go up and talk to people, whether they wanted to talk to me or not. And over time, I was able to develop a reputation with those same people. And to the point that, I became credible, so to speak, with them. And so that's how I navigated it. Just being comfortable in my skin.
I love to hear it. And you talk about it too. You said something around the lines of you can't be what you can't see. And I think a lot of times people need to see people like yourself in rooms and say, okay, I can do it. I see Cheryl, she's been able to do it. I'm gonna do it. I might not be able to do it the way she did it, but I believe I can do it because I see someone else that looks like me doing it. So I just want to say thank
That's
you so
right.
much. And just like I said, thank you again for your telling your family story because I think so often we don't get to see these type of books out all the time. So I think it's important for people just to know that there's history of people that have survived, and I think that's really important and to thrive like your family has in America. It's really beautiful to see.
Well, thank you. And more people need to write their history, to certify their history, and do their family tree.
Yep. And how we always in this podcast, you can kind of answer it however you want, but what should be in an entrepreneur or even a builder's toolkit?
A builder's toolkit, I would say the Black family who built America.
Love to hear it. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to put the book in the description below. Everybody, make sure you get a copy of The Black Family Who Built America. It's a beautiful book. And thank you so much again, Ms. Cheryl, for your time.
And Cal, also, please do a review and give me 5 stars.
Oh yeah, well make sure I'll put in our newsletter too. I'll let everybody know to do the same.
Okay. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.